Joining us now to discuss the Maduro case is former U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr. He led the Justice Department twice, most recently in the previous Trump administration when he oversaw an indictment in 2020 accusing Maduro of involvement in a cocaine trafficking network. Thank you so much for being with us. Let's start with the question everyone is asking. Was the military action to capture Maduro legitimate under U.S. law? Is Congress right to be divided and upset that there was no congressional authorization?
Yes, it was completely legitimate under U.S. law, under our Constitution. And that raises two questions. One, do we have the power as a country? Is it appropriate under American law to, use our defense and law enforcement powers the way we did to apprehend Maduro? And the second question is, assuming it is legal for the United States to do it, which branch of government should make that call, and is it necessary to have congressional approval? And there's been debate on both of those sides. And my question, in my mind, there's no question that the United States, under our Constitution, had the right to deal with the threat posed by the cocaine trafficking, the drug activities, and the threatening conduct of Maduro's regime with Cuba, China, and Russia. And then as to who should approve it, I think the history is very clear that this kind of action, targeted action to deal with a particular threat, is within the discretion of the president. Yes, the Congress can declare war, but responding to particular threats using force is something that historically virtually all presidents have done.
Well, in fact, the last time the U.S. deposed a Latin American leader was exactly 36 years ago to the day that Maduro was captured, when U.S. forces captured General Manuel Noriega in Panama. You were the Assistant U.S. Attorney General at the time. The White House relied heavily on your legal opinion to conduct that invasion. Does Noriega's case preview what we should expect to see with Maduro? What are the legal parallels and differences between the Maduro and Noriega cases?
Well, you're absolutely right. I was responsible at that time for all the legal issues surrounding just cause, where President George H.W. Bush sent 26,000 troops down there to arrest, capture, and bring back for trial Manuel Noriega. There are a lot of parallels. We did not recognize Noriega as the legitimate government of Panama because there had been an election which clearly the Democratic forces won, and he suppressed it and remained in power. Same thing with Maduro. We do not recognize Maduro. Under our law, Maduro is not the leader of the state. Maduro is just a Venezuelan citizen who has seized power and is oppressing the Venezuelan people. That's how our law views it. And that was the same with Panama. Both of them were involved heavily in the drug business. I'd have to say Maduro is much more heavily involved and has repressed his country for over a decade and has destroyed their economy. The economy of Panama was weak, but these are people who drove the economy from being the wealthiest in South America down 80%, the GDP down 80%, to the point where many of their citizens have to forage in garbage bins to eat. That's what we're dealing with. Quarter of the country left the country, a quarter of it, 8 million people. So we're dealing with a human crisis, a humanitarian crisis. We're dealing with a country that's deeply involved in narcotics trade, and it was clearly justified, both as a matter of law enforcement and defending the interests of the American people.
Pope Leo has called for the safeguarding of Venezuela's sovereignty and that the rule of law enshrined in the Constitution is followed. From a Catholic perspective, how can we apply the just war theory to this specific moment? How are you viewing this from a Catholic lens?
Well, there are a number of things. First, a just war is fought for defensive purposes, to protect the interests, the well-being of your own citizens. And here, you're dealing with a regime that has been preying on the United States. We indicted him because, and there will be evidence, that he's deliberately trying to weaken and hurt the United States, and he's responsible for tens of thousands of Americans, probably hundreds of thousands after all this time, of American deaths. It's a deliberate thing to attack our country. And also our vital interests were at stake. He was providing a base for Hezbollah. He was involved in manufacturing weapons for Iran to use against our allies. And he provided a base for both Russia and China in his country. But you know what? Sovereignty, why do we care about sovereignty? Because sovereignty is to show respect for the idea that a people should determine their own future. They should make their own choices, that a people should be able to govern themselves. Now, that applies where you have freedom. But we're dealing here with a regime that overturned the results of a free election and clearly was not accepted by the people. When you have a quarter of the country leaving, and polls and every indication is the last election they held, he lost again.
Right.
So you're dealing with an unpopular dictator who has seized power and turned that country into a piggy bank for his family and for his generals. Why should we respect sovereignty over the freedom of the people?
And speaking of freedom, you have been a prominent defender of religious liberty. Can you shed any insight into the religious liberty landscape in Venezuela and persecutions that Venezuelan Catholics are facing right now?
Well, yes. I mean, this is a secular socialist government, and they have not protected religious liberty, especially where they view leaders as hostile to the government or not supporting their policies. And the Catholic bishops down there, I think, issued a statement and made clear that they felt that he had been an oppressive ruler and were relieved to see him ousted from power, and that was a positive step. And I hope the leaders in Rome pay attention to the position of the Catholic bishops down in Venezuela that have had to deal with it.
And my final moment with you, after Maduro, do you foresee the Trump administration honing in on another nation next? Cuba, Colombia, for example?
I don't know, I would use the idea of honing in, but Cuba is completely dependent on Venezuelan oil. And Cuba is so poor because of their socialist regime that they can't afford to buy oil. So what they do is they swap military and intelligence assets and help to the Venezuelans in order to get the oil. I think the oil will be shut down, and I think that will create a crisis in Cuba, and I think Cuba could very easily fall. I think it also puts pressure on Colombia. The leader of Colombia is the first socialist left-wing leader of Colombia. Has had it in over 100 years, and it's been a disaster for the country. His ratings are extremely low. This is an election year. He cannot succeed himself. So I think there's an opportunity for a change in government there. I don't think we necessarily have to do anything there. I think that will come.
Former U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's great to talk to you.